This is our Math 0332 review number 2, and these will be our questions 1, 3, 4, 6, and 7. I'm basically going to do a video of each type of question that you'll see on the review. That way you have a couple that you can try on your own and just check your answer. So we're going to start off with number 1, and you're given a table. So in this table, we have a column for fractions, a column for decimals, and a column for percent, and we want to convert, so for instance, the 5/8 to a decimal, but also to a percent. So we'll start off with 5/8. If I want to convert a fraction to a decimal, we have to divide. So we're going to do the top divided by the bottom, so it would be 5 divided by 8, and when you do that, you'll get 0.625. So now that you have your decimal, we need to change that decimal to a percent. So the way we change a decimal to a percent is we're going to take our decimal, which is 0.625, and we're going to move the decimal point twice to the right. So essentially you're just multiplying by 100. So this would go right here, 1, 2. It is now 62.5%. So that will go in our percent square. So now 5/8 has been converted. So if we go down to our second row here, we want to change a decimal to a fraction and also to a percent. So probably easier to just go from decimal to percent. So if we're going to go this way, we know that we take the 0.55 decimal, multiply by 100, which means we are going to move the decimal point twice to the right, and we end up with 55%. So now we need to change our decimal to a fraction. So there's a couple of ways we could do that. Since we have the percent, we could actually just put the 55% over 100, because percent literally means divided by 100. But we're going to have to reduce that. So 55 and 100 has a common factor of 5. If it ends in a 5 or a 0, then you can divide out a 5. So 55 divided by 5 will be 11, and 100 divided by 5 is 20. And then if you check 11 over 20, they don't have any other common factors but 1. So you have your result here. So I'm going to go through and just kind of box these final answers because my work got a little squished in here. So there we go. And of course the percents, we have those in blue. So our last one, we're given a percent. We need to change it to a decimal. We also need to change it to a fraction. So percent to decimal is easier, so we could just start there. So we have a 42%. So right now the decimal point is at the end. So it's right here. We'll do this one in red since we're going the other direction. So percent means to divide by 100, or I could just move my decimal point to the left twice. And we end up with 0.42. You could also do 0.42. The 0 before the decimal point does not add any value. So to maintain consistency, we'll just use the 0.42. And then to get it into a fraction, we could take the percent again, which is 42. And percent again means divided by 100, so we'll put it over 100. 42 and 100 They're both even numbers, so I could divide them by 2. So we'll divide out a common factor of 2. And I end up with 42 divided by 2 is 21 over 100 divided by 2 is 50. And then you would see if they have any other common factors. So 21 has a factor of 3, but if you do 50 divided by 3, it's not going to work. 21 also has a factor of 7, but 50 divided by 7 will also not work. So 21 over 50 is simplified. So that is how we would convert between fractions, decimals, and percents. So we're going to move on to question number 3. Pretty much 2 through 6 is all setting up a proportion dealing with percent. So we've learned, let me put this format here, that we can use a special format of a proportion of part over whole equals percent over 100. And remember, the 100 always stays put, but all the other parts, the part, the whole, percent, we have to plug something in. And so we can figure out the part, the whole, and the percent from reading the problem. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at number 3. You should have it there on your test review. It says a survey of 240 students, so 240 students found that 180 of them use texting as the primary method of communication. So 180 use texting. And you're asked, what percent is this? We'll just shorten this. What's the percent? So if you look back at our format, you're asked for percent right here. So that should automatically tell you that we are doing the part over whole equals percent over 100. So now we just have to identify the part, identify the whole, and plug it in and solve. So your 240 students, we have to figure out if that's part or whole, and then we have 180 that use texting. So 180 use texting. So there's a total surveyed of 240. So that should be the whole. So if we do this, we have part over whole equals percent over, we know the 100 is going to be there regardless, but the 240 is our whole, therefore it will go in the bottom on the left hand side. And then 180 use texting, well, that's just part of them, so that's going to go in our numerator. And then you're asked, what is the percent right here? So if we don't know it, that's going to be our x. So we will plug in an x for our percent. So we've learned that in order to solve a proportion, when we have a ratio equal to a ratio, it's a proportion, and we can solve by cross multiplying. Some of you guys might know it as like the butterfly method or something like that. But really, we're just going to multiply these guys. So if we do that, 180 times 100, let me change my color here. We end up with 18,000 equals, and then we will cross multiply our other side. $240 times x, which will give us, sorry, trying to change colors again, 240x. So we don't want to know what 240x is, we want to know what x is equal to. So we need to get rid of that 240, and right now the 240 and the x are being multiplied together. So to undo that multiplication, we will divide, and if I divide one side, I have to go over here and divide the other. So we'll do that division, and then we will know what our x is equal to, which is our percent. So x equals to 18,000 divided by 240. You should get 75. And remember that x was our percent, so it's really 75%. That would be our final answer. So taking a look at number 4, you're told that the sales tax rate is 8.5%, and if Darla buys a refrigerator for $645 before tax, how much will the tax be, and what is the amount of the total purchase? And you're also asked to round the tax to the nearest cent if we need to. So again, we see a percent problem, so that should tell us part over whole equals percent over 100. So if we kind of piece this together to figure out what we know and what we don't know, you're told the sales tax is 8.5%. So the percent we automatically know is going to go in the percent spot. That should be the easy part. Now if we look at the fridge, that's $645, you have to think about it. Is that the part of her bill, or is that going to be the whole? So the fridge would be the whole because tax is only part of the fridge. So $645 will go in place of the whole, and then you're asked to find the tax first. We'll focus first on our first question. How much is the tax? Well, the tax is just going to be a portion of whatever the fridge costs. So we will go ahead and get this filled in. So part, which is our x if we don't know it, right? So part is x. Our whole is our $645 for the fridge, equals our percent, which is 8.5, over the 100 that we always have in the formula. And again, we work on our cross multiplying, so x times 100, that's going to give you 100x. And then we also need to do 645 times 8.5. So, sorry, changing colors. You should get $5,482.50 here. And then we need to solve for the x, so we're going to have to divide both sides by 100. So we will get x equals 54.825, but we're talking money. So this is dollars, this is our tax, but it needs to get rounded to the nearest cent. So the nearest cent is actually in the hundredths place, which I'll underline right here for us. So if I'm going to round that 2 off, I have to look at the 5, and then if it's 5 or higher, we bump up our rounded digit to +1. So we're really going to have $54.83 as tax. So that is the first answer to your question. Now take a look at the second part of your question. How much is the total? How much is she going to have to pay at the register, basically, is what you're being asked. So the total bill is just going to equal the cost of the item plus the tax. So the cost of the item was given to us in the problem, and the tax we just had to find, right? So all you have to do is add up those two numbers. So the total is going to equal $645 plus the $54.83 tax.
No, we're still in there.
So plus 54.83. So if we add those two, we should get $699.83. So now you have your two answers. You have the tax and you have the total. So taking a look at number 6, a family has a budget of $1,360 per month. If rent is 45% of the budget, how much is left for other things. So again, we see that percent right here. That should tell me part over whole equals percent over 100. So now we just need to identify what's the part, the whole, and the percent. So I've already underlined the percent right here. So rent is 45% of the budget. So we know that the 45 is going to go right there. The budget is $1360, and we want to know how much is left over for other things. So if my whole budget is $1360, well, that's going to be the whole. So $1360 will go in place of the whole. So that means that the part is what I'm trying to figure out. So the rent, however much rent costs, will be the part. So just notice over here though, your last question, how much is left for other things? It's not asking the rent, so this is going to be a two-step problem. So for part, that's what we're trying to figure out. Our whole is $1360. It equals our percent, which is 45 over the 100. That's from our formula. And of course, we'll cross multiply. Okay, so we have x times 100 to get 100x equals 61,200. Then to solve for x, we need to divide by 100. We should get x equals $612. So you have to consider what is x. That was our part right here, which we said was the rent. So $612 in rent, but again, look back at what we were originally asked. How much is left for other things? So we weren't asked how much is the rent. We still had to find it because we know that $612 of the budget is taken up. But to get what is left, we're actually going to have to subtract. So the amount left is going to equal our budget minus our rent. So if you look back at the problem, our budget was $1360. Subtract out the rent that we just had to find, which is $612. And that should leave you with the amount left over for other things. So if you do $1360 minus $612, you should get $748 left over for other things. So again, two-step problem. You had to figure out the rent over here, then you had to come and actually answer your question and figure out how much is left. So make sure that when you're doing these application problems, you always look back at the problem to see if you answered the correct question.